My name is Paula, and I use this YouTube channel to talk about things that are related to either being an INFP, because that's the personality type I am, or about things that have to do with writing, because I like to write. I write novels under the pen name EJ Mara, so if you want to read any weird sci fi, long winded novels, go ahead and go to Amazon.com or Barnes and Noble online and look for books by E.J. Mara. Anyway, today I wanted to discuss how to write compelling main characters in a young adult novel. That's the genre that I typically write, young adult or novels for teens. And it can be really difficult to come up with a character who feels realistic. So these are just some tips that I found helpful when it comes to creating characters or sharing characters with readers that feel realistic, that they feel like they can relate to. So, one of the things I usually do before I start working on the novel, even if I have a plot in mind, I might go ahead and write down the plot first so I don't forget it. But what I like to do before I even jump into writing the story is get a really good idea of the character, the main character, so that they feel real, like a real person to readers. And so I can discover more about them too before I start writing them into a story. So one of the ways that I get to know them is I like to sometimes create, I guess you call it a flow chart. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but like I'll draw a circle in the middle of a page and then write their name in the middle. Like, for example, the last book I wrote, the main character was Lainey. So I write Lainey in the middle of the circle. And then I'm going to like draw offshoots, like a little line with another circle that I can write in that describes her relationship with her parents and how that affects her. So, like in one offshoot, I put Lainey's father is abusive, unfortunately, and her mother was very kind and loved her and was a little bit pushy, but made her feel good about herself. But her mother died. So I put that, I write all of that in a circle, and then on the line that connects it to Lainey's name, I put the way that this relationship with her parents affects her. And I wrote that it gives her low self esteem. And then another offshoot, I write about her ethnicity. What does she look like? She is Creole, like Louisiana Creole, and which is usually just referred to as African American, but she's a very light-skinned African American um, from like a French background and an African background, Native American background. So how does this affect the way that she's treated? She's treated with prejudice. So that again contributes to her low self-esteem. She doesn't think very much of herself. Um, so I kind of like, I try to summarize that a little bit in the box that describes her ethnicity and cultural identity and how that affects the way that she views herself and the way she views other people. And then in another little offshoot, I will put her personality type. And this takes a little bit of time. Like what I'll do is I'll Google Myers-Briggs test, which is a personality test that lets you know it lets you know what category of personality you fall into. And the results that you get back will be something like INFJ, INFP, which is what I am, or ENFP, or ESFJ, or INTP. There are like all these choices. But those acronyms, I guess you could say, those acronyms stand for a very detailed description of a particular type of personality, how they react, like what their natural inclination is to react in certain situations, and why they think the way they think. So, pretty much everyone on the planet falls into one of those personality types. Sometimes maybe one or two. They might switch back and forth. So, what I like to do is take a personality test online as if I'm the main character of this story. So, I pretend to be Lainey as I take this personality test. And then when I get the results back, it tells me what personality type she is, which is a huge help in understanding my main character because it will tell me how she reacts in a relationship, how she reacts around friends, why it tells me that she's shy, like, and why she's shy specifically. And it explains some things that may have happened in her background to contribute to why she um, leans toward this personality type. So, those tests are amazing for helping you figure out deep things about your main character. And I usually like after I take that test, going back to the little flow chart or whatever you call it that I was writing, I will have a little bubble next to Lainey's name, and I'll put a personality type that that she got for her test, and maybe like a couple of sentences that describe her personality in a nutshell. And Lainey, by the way, she was an INFP like me. So that made it easier for me to write about her because I can relate so much to her. Another thing, what else do I put on that little bubble chart? Trying to remember. I think I also add something about a conflict. Yeah, I put a little offshoot with a conflict, like something that she really wants but doesn't have. Because that's also pretty important to the story. If you see me like waving around, I'm sorry. It's because there's gnats in here and I can't figure out how to get them out. So like they fly across the screen while I'm trying to do this. But anyways, so that like creating that kind of chart, it takes time to do this, to think about like all these details about your main character. Um, and there is one other one that I forgot to add, actually, too. I also add something about her style, like her personal taste in clothes, even if the main character doesn't really have personal style. Like if they don't know who they are, so they just grab whatever and wear it, that's important to who they are too. The readers need to see that also, so that they can get a clear picture of who this person is. So add that. What is their fashion sense like? Do they have fashion sense? Why is it like that? And then also something about their health, because health has a huge impact on why we do what we do. Um, Lainey, for example, struggles with OCD. So how does that impact her life? You know, how does that get in the way of her making friends? Why does she have OCD? Um, so add a little bubble about your main character's health and how that impacts their personality and the way that they view themselves. So that is, like I said, it takes time to do this, but it really helps you to get to know your main character. Another thing that I like to do is underneath that little flow chart or bubble chart or whatever you want to call it, is I like to go back to that question of what is it that they really want and don't have, and then kind of add to it what personal flaws does this character have that gets in the way of them getting what they want? Like, for example, with Lainey, what she really wants is she is in love with her best friend, but she has such low self-esteem and she's so down on herself that she's afraid to tell him. And she's been in love with him for like 4 years and she can't tell him. So that's what she wants. She wants him. But what gets in her way is her own problems with low self-esteem, with like a lack of courage and self-belief. So that is one of the main things that she has to overcome in the story. Like there's a lot going on plot wise, but through all of the plot that she's going through, her courage and her lack of confidence get in her way. So she has to learn to overcome that in order to deal with what's happening in the story. So it's important for writers to do the same thing, especially when you have a teen character who you want to be realistic. A real person has not just good qualities, but we all have a lot of bad qualities too. We have things that we're working to overcome, and we constantly get in our own way of achieving our goals. That's just life. That's what all of us deal with. So in a book that's supposed to reflect real life, we want to see that. We want to see a character struggle to get past their personal flaws. So that's what helps, because that's what helps readers to relate to that character. So it's important to think about that before you jump into writing a story. At least that's what's worked for me in the past. And one final thing that can help is to write down a plan, like a trajectory of your character's development as it relates to their flaws, especially that one main flaw, like maybe it's a lack of courage, like Lainey has, or trying to build her self confidence or something. So you want to kind of like write down how at the start of the story, your main character struggles with this huge personal flaw. Then you want to write down by midway through the story, where is he or she in relation to dealing with that flaw? Have they gotten better at it? Do they have more self confidence now, if that's the problem? Or have they gotten worse? So have a plan for that. And then by the end of the story, are they able to overcome it? Or do they have, maybe they haven't overcome it, but they're now equipped with the tools that they need to overcome it? Or do we see them just completely backslide and screw up their whole life and they don't overcome it by the end of the story? Like, have a plan for where you want this kid to go as far as their flaws are concerned. And also, it's a good idea to think about how this personality flaw of theirs and the way they continue to deal with it throughout the story impacts their relationships with their parents, with their best friends, and with their love interests. It's really important that those don't stay stagnant throughout the story, but we see that as the character changes, so do their relationships. Because that's what happens in real life. We as humans, we're constantly growing, we're changing. And as we grow and change, that impacts our relationships with the people in our lives. Maybe for the better and maybe sometimes for the worse. So it's important to see that kind of change happen in books too. That's what makes a book come to life. It makes it feel real. So those are my suggestions on writing compelling main characters in teen novels who come across as realistic. Like before jumping into the story, into writing it, take a few minutes, maybe even a whole day to really dig deep into who your character is. Write that little bubble chart or draw that bubble chart I was talking about that describes their ethnicity and how that affects their view of themselves, their relationship with their parents, their personal fashion sense, or if they don't have any and why, their health condition, and take a personality test as if you were your main character. Then when you get the description of that personality, add that to your chart too, to help you figure out who this person really is at their core. And then include what it is that they really want, that they don't have, that they desperately want. And what gets in the way, what personal flaw of theirs gets in the way of them getting what they want. And then include, after you do your little chart, you can write a plan for how you want them to develop throughout the story. Will they get overcome their personality flaw, or will they backslide and will it get worse? So have a little plan for how you want them to develop. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. And if you have some other suggestions, please feel free to share them in the comments. And I'm going to try and do an online class about this that goes into a little more detail about how to come up with solid main characters for teen novels, and also just how to write a compelling teen novel in general. Like what's worked for me and what I've noticed authors who I really, really admire, because I'm not that great, but authors who I really admire who do well at writing best selling teen novels. Like, what do they all have in common? So I will have an online class that'll either be like free or very, very inexpensive on my website, selfpublishingpro.weebly.com. So hopefully that'll be up in a few weeks. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye.